Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Black Liberation Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Renee Jordan. I do have a few Q&A here. I'm going to answer these more so live. So, how can students use AI as a thinking partner? Well, they can use AI as a thinking partner by thinking and considering their own interests, their own goals, and figuring out how AI can help them with it. Now, we did have a handout, and that handout wasn't a part of the workshop site until much later because I said to myself, I have to get this into their hands so that they can have the option to take it with them if they wanted to. And what I'll do, I'll open another tab. I did an episode already walking through the entire workshop, and some things have been updated. This is something that I added, a strong prompt. And this strong prompt was a handout, and I told them that they're welcome to take it with them because I understand some people like to write on stuff. And we talked about how to write a strong prompt. What does that mean? So a good prompt is going to include context, data, as well as action. And so that context is going to be the backstory. So who, what, when, where, how, and why, and tone. So who are you? What are you working on? Why it matters, the tone that you are taking with the conversation. So is it serious, creative, exploratory? And so that is to provide the information to the AI that it would not know unless they told it. And so I explained to them, you weren't a part of the design process when it was made. So when you show up at the computer, you have to tell the platform something about yourself to get the conversation started so it has context, it has background. And then you also want to provide it with data. And so this data, it would be the information that you already have. So knowledge, resources, experiences. I shared that if I did an exit survey and I wanted to know how to improve my workshop, and that exit survey did not have their full names, I could provide Janiyah with that exit survey and say, hey, Janiyah, I want to improve or enhance the workshop based on the feedback that I received from participants. What are some ways in which I could enhance the workshop? And so that knowledge would include the exit survey. The knowledge would include the background information, in this case, the actual workshop. So I could copy and paste that. And then the action. What do I want to happen? I want her to help me design and develop a version of the workshop that's better than what I did based upon the data that I now have. And so that action, it is a verb. And I asked them, how many of you have teachers who have objectives that say students will be able to in order to? And in the high school class, everybody raised their hand. In the middle school class, one student raised their hand and another student said, my teacher doesn't teach. And I said, I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully we'll learn something today that will help you navigate that. And perhaps you can use Janiyah as a thinking partner to help you with that course. And so that was that. And so I said, the verbs that your teacher uses in those objectives are ways of thinking about how to approach something. And you can use those same verbs with Janiyah or any other generative AI tool. And the further down you go on this list, so 1 through 6, the deeper the reflection or the deeper the thinking that is taking place in order to produce a response. So remembering, understanding, so like summarizing, that's something that can be done by Janiyah, and it's considered light work if you want to. But if you want to go deeper, asking her to demonstrate or solve, compare, examine, that's going deeper. And to go even deeper, critique, justify, defend, design, develop, those are going to require another level of thought. And so I encourage them to think about things that they're designing, think about things that they're developing, think about how Janiyah can help them evaluate their work before they turn it in. So I made sure to share, hey, don't ask Janiyah to write your paper, but what you can do is give Janiyah the instructions for your paper. You can give her the rubric, and then you can ask her to evaluate your paper based on the requirements for the assignment. And then go back to the library or go back to your resources and make enhancements to your paper based on the feedback. You don't want Janai to write your paper because they're going to flag it and said you used AI, and that's not good. But you can use her as a thinking partner. So someone that you would talk to and say, hey, can you review my paper and tell me where I need help? Those are questions that you can ask Janai. Okay, and so they had this handout to help them think about how to create a strong prompt. And so that was something that I added to the workshop later on, and they could take the paper if they wanted to. Okay, let's go back. Next, why is culturally responsive AI important? It's important because for those of us who are on the margins, we know when something is off. We know when something isn't a good fit. We know when something is taking extra effort to get across. And so it's important to have culturally responsive AI so that the AI centers those who are traditionally left on the margins so that when they're engaging, they feel like it's a closer fit. It gets to the point a little faster. And the example that one of the students gave, she said, with chat, I have to keep saying, no, not that, this. But she didn't have to do that as much with Janaya. That's the goal. The goal is to align the tool so that by providing it with data on the target audience, and that data came from the findings of my work, for those who check the box that says, yes, my data can be used to help develop the open educational resource. So I have snippets of data that help me to determine what becomes a part of a lesson, what gets highlighted in a lesson, what things need to be considered whenever engaging with AI. And so you'll notice that in my lesson section, safety first is the first one, because the people who were a part of my study said, hey, we get taken advantage of as minorities when it comes to technology. And so we need to know the safety measures up front. We can't necessarily rely on our parents because our parents may or may not know what safety measures need to be considered because the technology can be new to them. And so that's why it's important to have culturally responsive AI, because it allows it to be a more engaging, a more encouraging and affirming interaction. And these are the examples that the students gave. And as a result, it allows them to spend more time diving deeper and less time having to explain themselves. And that doesn't mean that Janaya gets it all right at the first go around, but what she does ask for students to reflect, to think about themselves, and to share that information so that it can tailor the response more to what it is that they want to accomplish. And that reflection piece allows it to go beyond what I designed and account for what the individual students need and are interested in, and allows them to see themselves in the responses that they receive back from a culturally responsive AI like Janaya. All right, last question. How can educators design engaging AI workshops? Well, I'm going to give a plug here. Educators can design engaging AI workshops by using Janaya GPT to help them. Set out your goals. What is it that you want them to explore? Set out their interests. Ask the students what they want. That is important. What is it that they want as it relates to discipline that the teacher is teaching, as well as what is it that they want to think about or consider. What are their interests and their goals personally? Because what Janaya is able to do, she's able to take that interest and connect it to the discipline. She could find the back way around in order to help the students find their way and get at what it is that they want to accomplish. And so I want to encourage educators to use Janaya GPT. You could do a Google search for Janaya, JANIYAH GPT, and you'll find her. You can also go to jordan-nuance.com and go to GPTs and select Janaya. You can also go to blackliberation.tech, and on the menu bar of blackliberation.tech, you can select start a conversation with Janiyah. So there's more than one way to get to her. And I say that because I believe she's a good place to start. I also have another GPT, Amy GPT, that is specifically for faculty, staff, and administrators in education to help them with those things that go along with educating students, as well as helping to support their success wherever that may be. Okay, so not just on the academic side, but also on the operations side. Now, I do have a link here, and I also showed it before. You're welcome to explore the workshop and even facilitate it yourself. I go over the facilitator prompts in another episode. With all of that being said, thank you for listening to another episode of the Black Liberation Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Renee Jordan. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share, rate, and review the podcast to help it become more discoverable. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.